Ever catch a whiff of something and get instantly zapped back in time? Like maybe cinnamon reminds you of holidays or old books take you somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Scent memory is incredibly powerful stuff.
Well, that power of scent is absolutely central to Patrick Süskind's novel, Perfume.
Ah, yes. The Story of a Murderer. A classic and pretty disturbing.
Exactly. And its main character, Jean-Baptiste Grenouille. What a figure. Incredible sense of smell.
But famously, no scent of his own. It's quite the paradox, isn't it?
It really is. And today, we're going way down the rabbit hole with Grenouille. We're going to look at his whole psyche through the Enneagram.
Specifically type 5,
Yeah.
with the sexual subtype.
Right. And the Enneagram, for anyone maybe less familiar, is this model, maps out 9 personality types, how they connect.
Yeah, it's a really useful framework.
And interestingly, one of you listeners actually sent in this fantastic essay looking at Grenouille from exactly this angle, type 5, sexual subtype.
Which is great. It gives us a really solid starting point for this discussion.
Totally. It helps structure how we can dig into what really drove him. His motivations, his desires.
Even though he's fictional, applying this lens, it can actually show quite a lot about why he did what he did.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. What really defines a type 5 personality in the Enneagram system?
Okay, so type 5s, at their core, they're often described as being driven by avarice.
Avarice, like greed.
Well, yes and no. It's not really about money or stuff. It's more a hoarding of things like knowledge, energy, privacy, autonomy, too.
Ah, okay, like protecting their internal resources.
Exactly. And it comes from this deep fear, a fear of being overwhelmed or maybe intruded upon or just feeling depleted by the world.
So they detach, is that the stretch?
Right. They tend to pull back, observe life from a bit of a distance rather than jumping right in. It's a way to feel safe.
That sounds so much like Grenouille.
Mm.
Always on the outside, absorbing everything through smell, but rarely really connecting. There's a line from that listener essay that just nails it. He lived encapsulated in himself like a capsule, waiting for better times.
Wow.
His excretions were all he gave the world. No smile, no cry, no gleam in the eye, not even his own scent.
Yeah, that paints a picture that really captures that retentive quality of the 5. Minimizing output, holding energy back, keeping boundaries super tight.
And his time in the cave. 7 years completely alone on a mountain.
That's maybe the most extreme example, right? That deep, deep need for self-sufficiency,
Yeah.
for total isolation.
The essay quotes the book about that time. In his whole life, he had breathed no more agreeable air. Never had he felt so secure.
More secure than in the womb, even.
Right. The world could go up in flames out there, and here he would not even notice he had withdrawn.
Right.
Simply to be near himself.
And that's the crucial part. For a 5, that withdrawal isn't just defense, it's valuable.
Valuable how?
It's the space they need to process, to understand, to just be near oneself without the world demanding things. That self-containment, it feels incredibly secure to them, maybe more than relationships do.
And it seems like Grenouille was like this from day one. The essay mentions how, even as a baby, he needed almost nothing.
Exactly. The book says, the quantity of milk and food that other infants his age devoured, he did not need.
Just a tiny bit was enough.
A few tablespoons a day were quite sufficient. To survive, he needed so little, like an ascetic monk or hermit. And this points to a kind of cognitive distortion often seen in 5s. This underlying belief that they just don't have enough inner resources to really deal with the world. So instead of risking not getting what they need,
They just don't need much in the first place.
bingo. And while that kept infant Grenouille alive, you can see how it would also stunt his ability to, develop empathy or form normal human bonds.
Okay, that paints a pretty clear picture of the core 5 traits in him. But now, this sexual subtype, that sounds different. How does that change things for a 5?
Right. The sexual subtype sometimes is called confidence or trust. It adds this unique intensity. It's quite different from the typical cool, detached 5 image.
Intensity, how so?
Well, they still value their knowledge, their independence, all that 5 stuff, but sexual 5s have this deeper emotional current, a kind of almost romantic idealism or longing.
Atlantic.
Really, in a way. They often get fixated on finding an ideal, maybe a perfect person or a perfect connection or even a perfect experience. And they can pursue these obsessions with, well, extreme dedication.
Taking extreme actions, maybe.
Definitely. And another thing, outwardly, they might still seem cool or detached, but inwardly, There's usually this incredibly rich, vibrant inner life going on.
But there's a catch, I assume.
Oh, yeah. The big conflict for the sexual five is this deep, deep distrust of relationships clashing with a very real, though maybe hidden, longing for profound intimacy.
Wow. Distrust and longing side by side. That sounds complicated.
It's incredibly paradoxical.
So how does Grenouille fit this more intense picture? Where do we see him seeking an ideal?
I mean, his obsession with the scent of that first girl he kills in Paris. That's it right there.
The girl selling plums.
Exactly. For him, it wasn't just a nice smell. It was like he'd found the absolute key to everything. The ultimate ideal scent.
The essay quotes him thinking, he had the strange presentiment that this fragrance was the key to the ordering of all other fragrances. That one could understand nothing about fragrances if one did not understand this one. He would squander his life if he did not succeed in possessing it.
See? That's incredibly intense, all-consuming.
Yes, squander his life over a scent.
It shows that all-or-nothing quality of the sexual five when they lock onto something. It's not just about knowledge anymore. It's about possessing this perfect thing, this ideal experience. For Grenouille, it just happens to be a scent.
And you have to think his absolutely horrific start in life played a huge role in all this. The abandonment, the rejection.
Oh, absolutely fundamental. Being literally thrown away at birth, rejected by wet nurses. That creates such a profound core distrust, a belief that care just isn't available.
Which feeds right into that paradox you mentioned.
Exactly. Wanting intimacy desperately, but being terrified it's not safe or even possible. It sets up that conflict.
So he learned very early on, maybe, that he could only rely on himself and maybe his own senses.
Precisely. That external deprivation, that lack of nurturing, it likely fueled the intensity of his inner world. His olfactory obsessions became a kind of compensation.
And the search for the perfect scent. It's like trying to find something to fill that emptiness inside.
It can definitely be seen that way. An unconscious attempt to find an ideal object in his case. A scent to heal that feeling of being incomplete, unwanted.
The listener's essay mentioned something called a confidence pathology.
Yeah, that relates to this. The sexual five can yearn for someone to trust completely, but they set these impossibly high standards, almost like they're subconsciously making sure no one can ever meet them, protecting themselves from potential disappointment or betrayal.
Which makes a kind of chilling sense when you look at what happens later. Even when he creates that perfume, the one that makes everyone adore him.
It does nothing for him. No real connection, no satisfaction.
Right. The essay quotes his realization. And he knew suddenly that he would find no satisfaction in love-only aversion. He was certain that love would rob him of his independence, his sense of self-sufficiency, the very essence of his being, and then the really dark part. To be recognized in his true existence and receive a response to his only genuine emotion, hatred.
That just perfectly captures the core bind of the sexual five. That intense desire for connection, fighting an even stronger fear of losing themselves in it. Independence versus intimacy.
Okay, so let's connect this back to his actions in the book. Can we see these specific 5 sexual traits playing out more concretely?
Yeah, definitely. Think about the contrast between his long stretches of, total withdrawal, almost catatonic sometimes.
Right, like in the cave.
And then these sudden bursts of intense, laser-focused obsession when a particular scent grabs him. That oscillation is very characteristic.
And that inner life you mentioned.
Huge. His incredibly detailed scent fantasies in the cave. That's proof of a really vibrant, complex inner world, even when he's outwardly doing nothing. It's a stark contrast.
And the murders themselves. I mean, seeking the perfect scent from young women. That just screams impossible standards, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And crossing any line imaginable.
Absolutely. It's idealization taken to a horrifying, pathological extreme. He's not just looking for a nice smell. He wants some kind of unattainable, pure essence.
I'll do anything to get it.
Which chillingly shows that willingness of the sexual five when obsessed to just completely disregard social norms, ethics, boundaries, whatever stands in the way of their fixation.
The essay also used this amazing metaphor. The privacy of the heart as Grenouille's inner purple castle. Can you expand on that a bit?
Oh, that image is so powerful. Let me see if I remember the quote. His heart was a purple castle, hidden behind dunes, surrounded by a marshy oasis and 7 stone walls.
Wow.
It was accessible only by air. It contained 1,000 chambers, 1,000 cellars, and 1,000 elegant salons. It just perfectly shows how the sexual five guards their inner world.
Like a fortress.
Exactly. An incredibly complex private space that no one can really get into. It's like They want intimacy, but they build these impossible walls around their heart at the same time.
Okay, and then his ending.
Yeah.
Pouring the perfume on himself, being literally consumed by the crowd. The essay called it perverse growth.
Yeah.
What's the thinking there?
It is perverse
Yeah.
and tragic, but you can sort of interpret it as this incredibly twisted shift, moving from that core five, avarice, hoarding himself, his essence, his knowledge,
Holding everything in.
right, to this final forced act of non-attachment. He finally gives himself completely to the world.
And it destroys him.
Utterly.
Yeah.
It just highlights how damaged he was, so fundamentally wounded that even his ultimate letting go is self-annihilation. There was no path to healthy integration for him. The gap between self-preservation and connection was just too vast, too damaged.
The whole scent and scentlessness theme is just
Wow.
so central. The essay argues his lack of a personal scent is like a metaphor for this whole five sexual dilemma.
It really works as a metaphor, doesn't it? His lack of scent becomes this physical symbol of that core five avarice, that withholding of himself.
Like he's holding back even his own smell from the world.
Exactly. And Claudio Naranjo, a key Enneagram thinker, asks something like, at a subtle level, we can understand his lack of scent as a symbol of his avarice. But has what he has not given to the world also been taken from himself?
Meaning, by holding back, he loses something himself.
Yeah. It leads to this profound self-deprivation. He can't even know himself because he's never really been present in the world, never emitted his own essence.
Which connects right back to that heartbreaking realization he has later on. Only one thing had no access to his power. He could not smell himself. If he could not smell himself and thus never know who he was, then he didn't care a fig for the world, himself, and his perfume. Just devastating.
It truly is. And then you have the flip side, his incredible, almost supernatural sensitivity to everyone else's scent.
But while having none himself.
Yeah, and that mirrors how sexual fives can be extraordinarily perceptive about others, picking up all these nuances while staying sort of detached from their own inner feelings. Great observers, but internally, maybe a bit lost.
Like Beatrice Chestnut mentioned, that vibrant inner life can sometimes be disconnected from outer reality or even inner emotional reality.
Exactly. And the perfect perfume itself, one he creates, it ends up symbolizing that impossible quest of the sexual five.
How so?
It represents achieving this ideal connection, this universal love, but without any of the risk, without any real vulnerability.
Because it's manufactured. It's not him.
Right. It confirms his own bleak view, which you quoted earlier. He would find no satisfaction in love-only aversion. Because real love, real connection, would demand he actually be present, vulnerable, risk losing that tightly controlled independence. And he just couldn't face that.
Wow. This has been, well, intense, like you said, but really fascinating looking at Grenouille through this Enneagram 5 sexual lens. It casts his motivations, his whole tragic story in a different light.
Absolutely. And it shows how, even with a character this extreme and disturbing, these psychological frameworks can offer real insights into human nature, the echoes of early trauma, and those deep conflicts between our needs.
It really makes you think. So maybe something for you, the listener, to chew on. How might that desire for an ideal connection, but without the messy vulnerability part, show up in less homicidal ways in everyday life?
Good question.
What are the potential costs, maybe subtle ones, of keeping the world or relationships at arm's length like that? It really highlights that constant balancing act, doesn't it, between needing our own space, our independence.
And that fundamental human need we all have for real, genuine connection. It's a tough balance to strike.